You have an intimate relationship. You've had it for 10 years. You trust your partner. So what does that mean? You know where you are. You know who you are. And you have a pretty good idea of where you're going. And then one day you find out that your partner has been cheating on you, not with one person, but with 3 people. And for the whole 10 years. Well, hypothetically, that comes as a shock. Although you may have ignored many intimations such might be the case. Irrelevant. Let's say it comes as a shock. Well, what happens to you? Well, you don't know where you are. You don't know where you've been. That's interesting, eh? Because you think you know where you've been because you've already been there, but all of a sudden something can happen so that you are so flipped over that you don't even know where you were. So that means in some sense the past is dependent on the present. A very peculiar thing. You also have no idea where you're going. In terms of not knowing where you are, that's deep, eh? Because you might think, well, I thought I was in a marriage. That turns out to be wrong. I thought I knew who my wife or husband was. That turns out to be wrong. I concluded on the basis that I knew my wife, that I knew something about women. That turned out to be wrong. I thought I was in a relationship with someone I could trust. That is wrong. I don't know enough about trust. I'm obviously too gullible. And you have a trusting relationship, and then you find out that they tell you, or you figure out from their phone or something, they're having an affair. And you look at them, and you think, well, what do you see? And you think, you see the person. It's like, no, you don't. You do not see the person. That's wrong. What you see is a huge pit that you're going to fall into. And you don't even know you see it, but your body knows. As your blood pressure goes through the roof and your heart starts to pound and you sweat. And the reason for that is your body sees what you can't see, and what it sees is something it seriously does not understand. It does not understand it. It sees the territory behind the map, right? Because when I look at you, for all intents and purposes, really what I'm looking at is my presuppositions about you. And because you're polite and well-behaved, you're gracious enough to act in accordance with those presuppositions, so I don't even really have to look at you. And thank you very much for that. Because it's very difficult to look at people because they're horrifying and profound creatures. And so everybody walks around behaving so we don't terrify the hell out of each other all the time. Now, when someone betrays you, it's like, poof, presupposition's gone. Okay, what's there? Well, God only knows. And that's what your body reacts to. And that's partly why the phenomenologist said, we react to meaning first. We don't react to the object. It takes a long time to see the damn object. So for example, let's say that your person has betrayed you. Now you think you knew who they were. And you thought you knew who you were. Ha! Guess what? You're wrong. You don't know who they are. And because you're such a moron, that means you don't know who you are. And it means you can't trust any of your memories with that person. And maybe none of your memories in any intimate relationships at all. Plus, what about the future? Well, so when you look at the person, what do you see? You see all that. It's like chaos. Whack. That's what you see. And that chaos is the meaning behind your presuppositions. And that's why the phenomenologist would say, meaning shines forth. That's phanesthai. It shines forth. And that's the primary thing we encounter. It's like, that's smart. And you know what's really weird? That's how your damn brain is organized. Sometimes, you're going from point A to point B, and something you don't expect manifests itself in the middle of your plan, but it's not such a catastrophe because you can just work around it. And then sometimes something pops up and like you just do not have a plan anymore. And so then you might ask yourself, just exactly where are you when you don't know where you are? And I would say that's a place. And it's actually a place that's well documented in classic religious and mythological stories. That's chaos. The Taoists, for example, they believe that the world is made out of chaos and order. Well, order, that's where you are when what you do gets you what you want. Chaos, that's where you are when you have no idea what's going on. And you might ask, well, is there a way that you should act when you're in chaos? And the answer to that is, there better be, because it's a place you're going to visit several times during your life. And everyone visits that. That's why it's an archetypal story. That's the descent to the underground. The underground is that horrible place that lurks underneath all of our presuppositions. It's the frigid lake underneath the thin ice that everybody's skating on. And it's something that can manifest itself at any moment. That's partly why in the Taoist symbol, the black paisley is chaos, by the way, and the white paisley is order. In the order paisley, there's a little black dot. Well, that's because order can turn into chaos, and does, at any moment. The reverse is also true. Chaos can turn into order at any moment. And insight will do that for you. You know, alcoholics report that when they hit bottom. It's like there's a catalysis and they look at the world in a different way. You know, now they're a new person. They're back from the underground. They've risen from the dead, so to speak. You know, and it's partly because what looks like your right hemisphere is pretty good at inferring patterns in novel and chaotic places. It's kind of keeping track of things that happen to you that are anomalous, and it makes alternative maps of the world that are there for you to rely on, at least to some degree, if that ever becomes necessary. How do you define reality? Now that's a tough one. So I would say most of you define reality like your Isaac Newton, or maybe like your Democritus, who was the first person who hypothesized atoms. And so in the Newtonian world, it's like billiard ball world, right? Everything is made out of little billiard balls, and they bang together in a causal way, and you can predict the consequences of their banging together. And if you extend it enough, you can conjure up an entirely deterministic world. A happens, causes B, B causes C, always the same way, and everything runs like a giant clock. That's Newton's model, and it was a clock model because, you know, back at that time, clocks, man, those things were pretty damn impressive. Clocks got the whole Industrial Revolution underway, and, you know, medieval cities would put an awful lot of time and work into their clocks, and they thought those damn things were really cool. You know, they could keep track of where the planets were moving. It's like, that's a big deal, a clock. And if you want to think about an invention that changed the world, it's like the clock's a big one. Now we can measure time. In the same way, everyone can measure time. It's a big deal. So the idea that the universe is like a clock, given that the clock can predict the universe, it's a pretty damn powerful idea. Turns out that it's wrong, because, you know, causality is a mess. No one really understands it. And there are levels of analysis at which causality, just in the way we experience it, doesn't seem to apply at all. You go down to the subatomic level, it's probabilistic. You can't predict single events. And I don't believe that you can predict the future. You can predict parts of the future in an extremely limited way for some purposes, for some span of time, and you can't even predict how long that span of time is going to last. You know, and some things seem to be more stable across more situations and more times than others, but there's instability everywhere, and it makes predicting things a very difficult thing to do.